Hello. Today we're going to talk about multiple choice tests and how to beat them. By doing just a few simple tricks, you can improve your scores on multiple choice tests without even really studying, although I recommend that you do. But with these techniques, you should be able to get a C without studying. The reason why I'm doing this, because multiple choice tests are horrible assessments of learning. The reason why we use them in high school and in university is because they're efficient. They're easy for professors and teachers to grade, but they don't tell me a lot about you as a learner. And so that's why I want to see them abolished. And if people are going to use them, that's fine. I'm going to help you do better on them. It's that simple. I have one caveat. For this to work, you actually have to do your readings and show up for class. If you don't do that, some of the stuff I tell you will work, but it's sort of contingent on the fact that you've been doing that. When I say you haven't studied, I mean all that hard cramming, or as they would say in the UK, revisions. First off, let's debunk an old myth that many students rely on. C is not necessarily the answer. And if you come to something that you don't know, C is not your choice. There are other things that you can do to improve your chances before you randomly mark C as an answer. First off, we have to think about how a multiple choice test works. And it's very simple. Typically you have 4 answers. Sometimes you might have 5. Sometimes you might have 6. If there's 6 questions, it makes no difference for you. First of all, there's at least 2 wrong answers. And if you have 6 answers, that means there's 4 wrong answers. And those answers are completely wrong. Then you have one answer that is close to being correct, but is not correct. And then you have one answer that is the correct answer. And so if you've been showing up for class and you've been doing your readings, you can take each multiple choice question and take it down from 4 or 6 down to 2 possible answers. And now you've given yourself a 50-50 chance. Now, before you answer, it's important that you stop and realize something about the test. And that is that you are not trying to put down the correct answer. This drives people crazy because you might know better. But it doesn't matter, because what you're looking for is what your professor or your teacher or the person who designed the test would say is the right answer. Because what you want to do is to ace the test. This is not a time to discuss the merits of a position. I want you to be successful at the test. And so, once again, if you've shown up for class and done the readings, you know what your professor would say is the answer, or the textbook or the articles you've read will say is the answer. And that's what matters. And then finally, now you've got that 50-50, and let's say you're still not sure what your professor would say is the correct answer. And so you want to rely on the fact that if your professor is giving you a multiple choice test, they're lazy. I'm not being critical of your professor or your teacher. Most people are lazy. We try and do what's easy, but the fact that they've picked a test that is not a good assessment of your learning, but something that makes it easy for them to grade, I know they're being lazy. So what you want to do is use that against them. You want to look for language that is similar to the language that your professor or your textbook would use. Does it sound like your professor? Does it sound like the textbook? People will often cut and paste answers directly out of the textbook or directly out of their lecture notes and use those for questions and answers. And so if you can hear your professor in that answer, that very well might be the correct answer. The other thing to do is to look for spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes, because the professor knows that that's a throwaway answer. They know it's the wrong answer, and so they don't spend a lot of time working on it. Most people will only spend time working on the question and the correct answer. The other answers that are in there, I mean, you've got the 2 wrong ones that you're throwing away, and then that one that is close, they spend a bit more time on, but often you'll find that there are spelling mistakes or grammatical errors. Now, this is tricky. You've got to know your professor again and your textbook, because textbooks sometimes, because of the way that they're written, they might have spelling mistakes and grammar mistakes in them. And the same with your professor. If you find that their lecture notes have spelling mistakes and grammar errors in there, this isn't going to help you. But for most people, they pay attention to what they publicly put out, and so there shouldn't be spelling mistakes or grammar mistakes in the correct answer. But once again, in the other answers, they don't really care. So there's a good chance that they will have grammatical errors and spelling mistakes in them. And then finally, once again, because as human beings we're lazy, professors and teachers will often reuse questions and answers. And so something where you're looking for an answer in one question might actually be in a question later on in the exam. So I recommend, if you're on a timed exam, you look at it and you still don't know the answer, what I recommend is that you put a little tick beside the one that you think is the right answer, and then skip forward as you're doing the exam and then come back to the one that you don't know. This is because you want to answer as many questions as you can in a multiple choice test or any test as possible, unless there's a penalty for a wrong answer. But the majority of multiple choice tests don't have that penalty. And so when you look at it, now you've gone through the exam, you come back to those questions that you weren't sure of, assuming that you still have time, and now you've got a 50-50 chance of guessing correctly. And at this point, what you want to do is just guess, because you want to make sure that you fill out every question you can. And your guess is going to give you more than a 50-50 chance. That's because you've shown up for class and you've done the readings. So somewhere in your mind and in your gut, that answer's bouncing around in there. And so trust your gut. And so when you look at that statistically, you actually, just by guessing, assuming that you went to the class, assuming that you've read the textbook and the readings, your chances are better than that 50-50. And in fact, in probability studies, you're going to end up with a C most of the time. But the other thing is that these techniques will help you when you come to questions that you're not sure of. You now have a whole bunch of tricks that you can use to help you get the right answer. And finally, I want to say, I recommend that you study. One of the things that research has found is that if you attend class and do the readings before you attend class, most students will get a B or an A, just based on that. The reasoning for that is that if you've done the readings before class and there's something that you didn't understand, then you'll be able to ask your professor, either during class or after class. Also, doing the readings first will provide a context for understanding the lecture. And if you weren't sure of the readings that you did before you went to the lecture, hopefully the lecture will then provide the context that you need to understand those readings. But you'll only know if you have done them before. And so do your best to attend class and to have the readings done. Another little trick that you can use is to take your notes every week and boil them down to 1 page per class. So you just review your notes on the readings and the lectures and try to create a 1-page summary that is as succinct as possible. And if you do that every week, by the time I have an exam, I have, maybe 5 to 8 pages, depending on how many weeks you have before you have your exam. I can quickly study But even more importantly, I've reviewed the material already, and so I've learned it deeply, and it will make test taking super easy. Remember, you're interested in learning. Suck every bit of knowledge that you can from your teachers and professors. You want to get smarter. That is the purpose of education, is to benefit you. I hope this helps you. I hope you go out to your next multiple choice exam and you do amazing. Remember, it's about your learning, not about the test, but I want you to be successful on the test so that you can do what you want with your life. Thanks for listening.